Rebuilding the nation's roads and infrastructure is one way the Obama administration is getting Americans back to work. Billions in stimulus dollars from the Recovery Act are going to states. But why aren't African Americans and other minorities getting more of the money? And what is being done to ensure we're getting our fair share? Here to talk about that and more is Secretary of Transportation, LaHood. Mr. Secretary, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Before we talk about transportation, let's talk about all this drama we're seeing with health care. I mean, you have all of these attacks and things along those lines. We see Republican AGs across the country filing lawsuit against health care reform. You served in Congress, Republican from Illinois. So what is happening in terms of with the party that frankly you represented in Congress, you know, in terms of some of the stuff we're hearing out here, because it's getting pretty vicious, these attacks against health care.
Well, look, this is a huge, big thing that's happened in the country and in the Congress, probably the most significant, most historic during my lifetime. I've been in public service 30 years. And it's controversial, and the Republicans made a decision. The Republicans in the House and Senate made a decision. They were going to be the party of no on everything, whether it's economic recovery or health care or whatever. And once you make that decision, then you go down that path, it causes a lot of controversy.
Were you surprised by that? Were you surprised that, I mean, look, you said before, look, the president has you in there to frankly to get Republican votes. Were you surprised that they pretty much say, look, we're just going to say no to everything?
Yes, I am, because it doesn't really reflect the districts that these members of Congress, particularly in the House, or even the states that the senators come from. Their people don't want them to come here and say no, no, no. They want them to say, let's solve some problems. Let's get people back to work.
And there's natural disagreement on both sides.
Of course, there's a disagreement, but the idea that you just say no to everything doesn't reflect what people really want you to do back home. And we're going to see that played out in the elections. I don't think there's any question about that.
Well, let's just talk about what's happening with transportation. So much money going to various states. And we've seen different reports. One particular study showed that of some $46 billion being spent, 1.7% of those stimulus dollars going to Hispanic businesses, 1.1% going to African Americans. I mean, extremely low numbers. And so what have you done in the Department of Transportation to really change that, to make sure that these communities are not being left out?
We have a program, our DBE program, Disadvantaged Businesses and Women-Owned Businesses, and we have reached out. Brandon Neal, the fellow that runs that program, has been all over the country, been to 56 different cities around the country, promoting the program, making sure that disadvantaged and women-owned businesses have the opportunities, the knowledge. That's what they need. They need to know what states have money and then how they can really enter into contracts to begin to spend that money and put people to work. And some states have done better than others. Missouri and Wisconsin, they actually called all the DBE businesses and women-owned businesses in a room, said, here's how much money we got, here's how you can access it, and here's how you can put people to work. And we're trying to get that kind of an opportunity around the country. We have actually spent $1.3 billion that has been allocated to disadvantaged and women-owned businesses. We need to do better. That's why we had a 2-day seminar here in Washington. 600 people attended. Thank you for participating. Thank you for speaking at it. But we need to do better. We need to communicate more. I've talked to the governors. The governors need to make sure that disadvantaged businesses know when they have the money and are ready to spend it. And we're going to step it up. Part of our job is to step it up and to get the information out to folks.
I say it in that particular speech that I believe that DOT and other departments need to really lean on these states to make it clear that, look, you can't leave folks out. When you look at the unemployment rate for African Americans, exceeding 16%, double that of whites in this country. And so as a result, if these businesses are being left out, they frankly largely employ African Americans, Hispanics, and others. And so when they're not getting dollars, then it's not going to the folks who actually need the jobs. And so now all of a sudden you have a problem that's further exacerbated because the money is simply not going to those communities.
Look, we plead guilty in part to the fact that not that we haven't communicated with governors. I've sent them a letter.
Right.
I talked to them when they were here in Washington for their annual governors meeting. I told them, you need to get this information out. And we're going to continue to work 24/7 until every disadvantaged women-owned business has the information about what money is in the states and how they can access it and how they can put people to work.
I made a point in the speech as well that is often overlooked, and that is when you deal with unions. because we have seen over the years, when it comes to construction industry and trade industry, that minorities, frankly, being frankly left out. City College of Chicago did a study where they said that if just for black men over a period of 20 years, had they not been shut out of the construction and trade union jobs, it would have resulted in a nearly $5 billion economic impact for those communities. And so even when DBEs are getting their fair share, when you have these major construction projects, they simply are not being employed as well. And so I've said, look, especially Democrats, granted you're not a Democrat, but Democrats need to be leaning on their union folks to say, look, stop the racism, stop freezing people out from these jobs that pay anywhere from $40,000, $70,000, $80,000.
Absolutely. These are good paying jobs, and you've made a good point. There are a lot of moving parts here. The states get the money, and then they enter into contracts. But then it's up to the contractors to go to the building trades, and it's up to the building trades to provide the training to people for apprenticeships and journeymen, so that there are African Americans, people of color, Hispanics, Asians, that can get in the mix here so they can actually go on these jobs and make the kind of money that you just talked about. That has to be a part of it. And some building trade groups around the country are doing better than others. But we also need to make sure that they understand that this money really needs to go to a broad range of apprenticeship programs and journeyman programs so that everybody's in the mix.